This is the brand new Google Pixel 9 Pro. I've been using it for a little while, and I have to say I'm really excited about the non-XL one. It's finally a Pro phone for Android users that is in a smaller body. Like, I know there's like the S24 lineup and some other phones out there, but it's kind of undeniable in all of those that the larger version, like the S24 Ultra, for example, is objectively a better device. But here, we're finally getting the best that Google can make in a smaller body. So the Pixel 9 Pro and the Pro XL are the same phone, with the only differences really being the size and kind of the battery a little bit according to the size. And I think that's really exciting. Now, this phone here, of course, being a Google phone, the cameras are going to be a huge focus. So I want to start off there before getting into the design or really anything else, because I've had some time to really take some very interesting photos with this and really test out what this is able to do. But first of all, you'll notice that the sensors and the hardware are really the same as last year, with the exception of the front-facing camera, which is now 42 megapixels. But in typical Google fashion, like as per usual, there are a ton of computational changes, improvements, some downgrades, depending on what kind of photos you're taking, as well as a lot of new features that pertain to the camera. So taking a look at these photos, I had some time to play around with this, and all the lenses on the back are either 48 or 50 megapixels, and honestly, I think they all did a really good job in almost every environment I tried. I think the star of the show is going to be that 5x telephoto lens. That's my personal favorite, but you're getting even natural, nice bokeh from a large sensor on the primary lens, and this right here is probably my favorite feature. It's called Add Me, and it's so, like, I took a picture, my sister was there, I wanted to be in the chair next to her, but there's only two of us hanging out. So I took one photo, she took the other one, and then boom, it stitches it together, send that to mom, and it's cool that we have a picture, even though there was nobody to hold the camera. The only thing I noticed, however, was on the corner, it got a little funky in the foreground, kind of blurred some foliage together, but the photo as a whole, super usable and like beyond impressive and easy to use. The main lens, like I said, does a good job of taking like close-up shots. You get a nice natural bokeh. It's not even using like a macro mode. It just does it very nicely from this kind of focal distance. But if you wanted to go macro, the ultra-wide lens does also double as a macro lens. That works reasonably well, but you can see there is a little bit of distortion in a lot of the ultra-wide shots. It is like extremely, extremely wide, but the color is at least fairly consistent with the primary lens, as you can see right here. Again, the foliage definitely lifts a lot of shadows, but still very contrasty. Like the blacks are very dark here, so dark lines, very clearly defined. But you know, the shots, pretty much everything I tried around golden hour just looked absolutely fantastic. The city skyline, even zooming into 2x, because we have that very high megapixel count on the main lens, still looks like a great shot when it's been down to 12 megapixels. Getting into lower light, I noticed that it does make the sky look kind of lighter than it actually is. So this was after sunset here, or just after sunset, and it did lift it a bit. This one's before sunset, as you can see. The 5x lens does such a good job. Very little distortion, nice sharp details in all these shots. Like, this is just my favorite lens. Whenever possible, I will be using this 5x lens. Even in like a really backlit, very dark statue here, it still recovered it pretty well. In absolutely low light, again, the sky looks a little bit blue here for some reason. Like, it does lift it up a lot. I know there's a lot of light pollution in the city, but I think in settings I will be tweaking that a bit. However, I think this shot looks awesome. Like, this did such a good job with the buildings. I was able to capture some stars just looking straight up and taking a handheld shot in 3 seconds. And interestingly, you can zoom into 20x and kind of get a moonshot here if you wanted to do that. I don't know. I don't think I'll ever really use that. But the front-facing lens, again, higher megapixel count now. It does a good job in all the environments I tested it in. The portrait mode on this, again, does a pretty decent job. It doesn't do the best job at like hair detection. You can see up there. The rear lens does a better job with this, but still not perfect. So starting off using the front-facing camera, you can see I was a little dark there. It brightened me up as soon as it realized what the subject was, but I do not have HDR on right now. I do not have video boost. I do not have voice boost. This is just the front-facing camera. So let me know how this works, what you think of it. Honestly, like most backgrounds, looks pretty good. As you can see in the beginning, it was a little dark at first. Now filming with the rear lens, if I walk around, you can see very stable. However, if you pan, it kind of gets a little bit jolty, especially if we zoom into 5x. You'll see right here, really looks great, but if you pan, it kind of gets weirdly jolty and moves around in a very unnatural way. But otherwise, I'm very happy with the video quality of this. Again, great dynamic range on that tree right there, good stabilization as well, and we're able to smoothly zoom. So let's zoom out to ultra wide. Very smooth transition to ultra wide there. Similarly, if we go up to 5x, fairly smooth transition. You'll see it click in right there. It looked pretty good. Now let's zoom all the way in to 20x. This does not have video boost on, but it still looks pretty good. You can actually film some pretty cinematic shots just in the regular camera mode, as you can see right here. This looks really good. I could actually use this to film some B-roll for some videos. So now in the typical video settings, first of all, very nice natural bokeh there, but we are able to zoom between the different lenses. So if we want to pinch out, it'll go to the ultra wide lens relatively smoothly actually. The ultra wide is of course going to be a little bit more stable, and we can zoom in of course all the way to that 5x lens right there. 5x, there it is. And I think everything looks pretty good. Like, I don't necessarily need video boost in most situations. Something to note, however, is even though this is an 8K capable camera, it doesn't actually shoot in 8K. Instead, that's just upscaling from the AI on device. So if you have like an 8K TV and you want to see it a little more smoothly on there, that's maybe where I would use it. Otherwise, I don't have any plans to ever use the 8K upscaling. It's just going to take up more space on your phone, and you're just kind of interpolating and adding details that, I don't know, for me, that's not something that I ever really plan on using. But let me know what the video quality looks like on this if you like it. I think the stabilization is the only thing that I'm not the biggest fan of. It kind of is a little jolty when you pan between things, but the color, the detail, a lot of it does look pretty good for a Pixel. All right, I lied. There's actually two things I don't love about this camera. The second thing is the location of the microphones. I'm trying really hard not to cover it up, but they're exactly like right on the corners of the phone, exactly where you would normally hold it if you're filming. And so I find that I very often cover up the microphone, or at least one of the microphones, while I am filming. So cameras, huge deal for this phone, right? But the design itself is also a really big improvement. And I think some people would look at this and they're gonna say, oh, that just looks like the iPhone. And in some ways, from the front, it does look and feel similar to an iPhone, but I think that's actually a good thing. And on the back, it is distinctly Pixel. Like, that does not look like an iPhone on the back. You've got the big Google logo, the big long camera bar. It's a very distinctly Pixel look, and personally, I'm a big fan of that. I love the boxier edges all the way around. I really like the size and the premium feel of this, and I had several like lifelong iPhone users hold the phone, and they said, yeah, like, this is actually a really nice phone. If anyone's going to convert from an iPhone, this is the phone that they are going to switch to. But okay, I'm getting on a tangent here. Let's come back to the design right here. On the back, we have a soft touch matte glass. Comes in a couple different colors. This one's hazel. It's kind of like a little bit of a greenish gray. Very satisfying color though. And then a very high gloss finish on the outside, the rails all the way around. So it's going to be the opposite of the Pixel 9, which is glossy and matte. I think this looks and feels very premium. I thought I was going to get a ton of fingerprints on the outside, on the rails here, but it's not nearly as bad as I expected. I'm not sure why that is, but it looks pretty decent. I do suspect, however, that we probably will be getting some scratches on there. At least that's what I got on my iPhone. It just, in time, things get scratched up on the outside. It's claimed to be, however, 2 times more durable than the 8 and the 8 Pro. We saw this with the iPhone in the past. I think that's mostly geometric there, more so than any material changes. By making it a boxier design, you have less glass exposed on the outside, and as a result, when you drop it, you're more likely to survive that drop. Looking at the front, the display has a pretty substantial improvement with 15% thinner bezels. It's very uniform all the way around, and this one is actually a 6.3-inch actual display. The thing looks really nice. I wish it was 6.1 inches, like a little smaller would be nice, but hey, like 6.3, I'll take it. This is a really nice looking phone. And the camera bar on the back, I forgot I used to do this on the Pixel 7 Pro, but I find myself using that kind of like to hold the phone up a little bit with my finger there. It's just like a nice little spot to rest your finger with that camera bar. And I know like Samsung did it with the S10 series. It's a better way to have the camera laid out rather than all packed into the side. Having it across the back means if you lay it down, there's no camera wobble. It looks uniform, it looks balanced. I think that as far as a design standpoint goes, this kind of feels like the peak Pixel design. Like, this is really the phone that I wanted from Google from a long time. And the reason I say from Google in particular is because Like, yeah, the design, anyone could kind of copy this design, but it wouldn't be a Pixel phone without the features. And Google gave us quite a few new features, as well as a lot of features that we're already seeing on a lot of other Android phones coming out this year. Like Gemini, for example, Circle to Search, a lot of those AI features are obviously going to be on this phone as well, which give you a great experience, but Google's giving us some other cool things as well. For example, Gemini Advanced is coming for free on any of the Pro phones here from Google for 2 years using Google One. So they're giving you Google One for free for 2 years, and then after that, you have to pay for Google One, and Gemini Advanced is going to be included there. But other cool new AI features. As I talked about before, Add Me is going to be a big one. There are a couple new apps as well, one being Screenshots, which runs Gemini Nano or uses Gemini Nano in the background on device to essentially look at all the screenshots you have on your entire phone and analyze what they are and just know about them and answer questions. So I was thinking maybe this would be useful for, like, if you ever get like an IRS audit and you have to search your receipts and you have screenshots of them, that would be a great way to kind of not have to read through every screenshot. Just ask Gemini to find a certain one and it could do that. So in essence, you open the Screenshots app and then you can just search screenshots for anything you want. So if I have a screenshot of like an article that I thought was interesting about like NVIDIA, I could just say like, what was that thing about NVIDIA? It'll present the screenshot that says that in there. And it says like, I could read it. I can learn everything that I needed to about that screenshot. So I think that's really cool. Everyone's going to have different use cases for that. Leave a comment for where you think that might be useful. But for me, I think it'd probably be in receipts. We also have Studio, which is like essentially just generative AI. It's going to imagine stuff and have Google create it. Not something that I'm ever really going to use, but kind of cool if you're trying to create new designs. Like I've been using ChatGPT for this a lot. Like if you're doing, I don't know, kind of like print on demand things or just making a logo, there's situations where it's just nice to have AI create a design for you instead of having to go into Photoshop and really build anything out from scratch. From a more pragmatic standpoint, something I think people will hopefully not be using, but potentially this could be life-saving, very, very important. There's finally satellite SOS available on this phone. So if you are like way off grid, say you trip and fall, you can't hike back, and you don't have cell service, you don't have Wi-Fi, obviously, you could use SOS and contact emergency services and potentially have that save your life. Like that's a feature that alone, if you do a lot of backpacking or off-grid stuff, in the past, I would choose to bring my iPhone just for that safety feature, but now I can just hold on to my Pixel and still get that exact same feature. They don't charge for that for 2 years after launch. I don't know how much it's going to cost after that. It might just be bundled in with like Google One, for example, but it's not going to be free forever, which is no surprise. Additionally, they gave us a new weather app as well, like a dedicated Pixel weather app. I used to use Weather Underground on Android phones just because it's consistent, it's pretty accurate, but there's a lot of ads in there, so it's not the best app to use. The weather app that comes with Pixel is very minimal, very clean, very Google feeling as well, and just a bunch of widgets there. They look like everything I would really want, including like UV index, humidity, visibility, air quality, wind speed, different things that I would check on a day-to-day basis just at a quick glance. So pretty good from that standpoint. Now, there's a lot more features to talk about, but I want to talk about what is inside this phone. There's going to be some pros and cons here. On the pros, this now has, well, okay, maybe not pros. This is a headline that seems like a pro, but hear me out on this. It now has 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is a lot, but at the same time, you're not actually using all 16 gigs of RAM in the way you would have on previous phone. Instead, it is now compartmentalized for multimodal AI. Like running Gemini is going to use a lot of RAM, so they have some carved out just for that, and so you'll use the rest on your phone, and so it's going to work well, but you're doing more RAM heavy things, so it kind of makes sense, and it's going to scale up compared to older phones. And as far as I'm aware, this is the first phone to compartmentalize the RAM for multimodal AI, so I actually really do like how it does that. As far as the storage goes, we have 128 gigs of storage on the base model here, the base 9 Pro, and if you can go up to 256, 512, or 1 terabyte. I mean, maybe that helps keep the cost down. I think 256 would be kind of a nice baseline on a phone like this, being a Pro model, but hey, like I said, if that's what they have to do for the cost, then it is what it is. As far as charging goes, you can charge this up to 70% in 30 minutes, so a fairly fast charge there. And then we have the Tensor G4 chip on the inside. Tensor is great because it works so well for any kind of AI features that Google really has baked into here. But as far as like benchmarks and everyday speed tests, I can't say it's going to be the best one out there. You can see just from a simple little app opening test, it's snappy, it's fast. The animations feel very, very fast. Like scrolling through my apps feels like super smooth and impressive. But like opening apps, it's not always going to be the absolute fastest out there. The battery on here is 4,700 milliamp hours. I feel like that means less and less these days. There's so much more based with like software and hardware optimization for the battery life that, like, I don't know, what does 4,700 milliamp hours really mean anymore? That could be a terrible battery life on some phones. On this one, Google does a pretty good job of like really shutting down tasks when it's in standby. So really like a full 24 hours, like charge it up until the morning, and you won't have to charge it until the following morning if you're not charging it overnight. There's also a new vapor chamber for faster cooling. I don't know, I haven't really done a lot of gaming on here. I haven't noticed much heat at all, so I can't really comment too much on that, but I am really excited about the new call-related features. Google has always been kind of in a class of their own for focusing on like the call suite for a phone, which makes perfect sense. I don't know why others don't really do that. Of course, you have things like Hold for Me, you've got like Direct My Call, like all these cool different features they've added for a pretty long time, as well as like call screening. But now with Clear Call, which is going to improve calls, which is nice, and you have Call Notes as well, which summarizes your call, and obviously it's going to notify the other person that it's doing that. But the idea is there that like if someone tells you their phone number, you don't have to ask them to repeat it. You could just see everything right there. I think the example that Google gave was like you're talking to a mechanic, and then later you're talking to somebody else, and they're like, oh, what did the mechanic say? And you're like, it was like a thing, I don't remember what it was. Well, you could check the call notes now and have a pretty good answer of exactly what was said during that call. So those are some of the highlights that I noticed with this phone. Kind of getting into the pros and the cons now. Like, is this phone actually going to be worth it? Well, on the positives, it is a very premium feeling phone. From the hardware standpoint, I am extremely happy that Google made the choices they did. I wouldn't say that this looks or feels much like an iPhone, besides having the boxier design on the outside and like the matte glass finish in the middle. Like in that sense, they are fairly similar. You can see that. But the camera bumps are just so different that it's a distinctly Google phone. And I think people are going to like that. It's not a bad thing to look a little bit like an iPhone in a world where the iPhone is the most popular phone, or at least in the US, where it's such a popular phone. Looking a little bit like that, I think is not a bad thing. Another positive, the smaller body just is, in my opinion, just fantastic. Having a smaller phone that still has top tier flagship specs is just so hard to find. Additionally, the Face Unlock still works really well. You're still getting 7 years of updates with this. The weather app is pretty awesome. And the phone can also help you out with like a lot of Gemini things. Like you can just say like, help me make a list for like taco night, get some like a grocery list for taco night. And it can kind of help you make this list and say, all right, well, maybe you want like some lettuce, maybe you want some tomatoes, maybe you want some pico, whatever. I think that's kind of a useful feature that I'm still learning where I would want to use that. Lastly, Screenshots is another app that I know is going to be so useful. But again, we're going to figure out where it's actually useful once you start using this app a little bit more. Between pros and cons, I want to add one that's just like undecided. I don't know about this temperature sensor. Like, I don't know if anyone still uses that. I know it was on the 8 Pro. I never used it. It's cool. But like, to me, it always seemed a little bit like a gimmick. Like, I never really used it. But unfortunately, getting into the cons, because this is somewhat similar to an iPhone, right? Like, this is supposed to be the phone that iPhone users use when they switch over to Android. There are going to be some things that you don't have that like iPhones would have. One is going to be like the magnetic charging. Qi wireless charging, or Qi 2 wireless charging rather, is kind of compatible with this, but you don't have the magnet in here. So you won't be able to use a Qi 2 wireless charger and just like put this on your car or on your desk or anything like that unless you get a case. And that's something that I don't know why it's been taking so long for Android to adopt that, but I would love to see something like that on this phone. The second drawback, like I kind of said, is I'm sure it's going to be in the comments. People are going to say this looks like an iPhone. Like I said before, I think it's just fine. I'm not going to beat a dead horse on that one. That's kind of all the drawbacks I found with this phone right now. I was really on the fence about actually making this phone my everyday phone for the remainder of the year. Like, Early in the year, I was using the S24 Ultra. That was my everyday phone for a really long time. It's a very large phone, not super pocketable. If you have like a little bike pouch, you're going on a bike ride, like this is not gonna fit in that kind of space. But it was a great phone with great cameras. Then I decided, you know what, I really do like foldables. When the OnePlus Open Apex Edition came out, I did switch entirely to this. I love the foldable concept. It's such a great product overall. And now I'm at a weird little crossroad. I know I either want to use the Pixel 9 Pro, a nice compact phone with just the best cameras on it, or I could use the Pixel 9 Fold. If the cameras are comparable, I'm going with the Fold. If they're not, I'm going with this right here. So if you want to see that comparison, definitely get subscribed and leave a comment with what other products I should compare this phone to. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing. I'm Mike O'Brien. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.